General Mark Milley confirmed the phone calls took place in a Wednesday statement via his spokesman Colonel Dave Butler. Former acting Defense Secretary Christopher Miller, who led the Pentagon at the time of the second call, said he would never authorize the secret comms. She said Biden has complete confidence in Milley's fidelity to our Constitution. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also expressed his support. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said in a briefing on Wednesday President Joe Biden said he has great confidence in General Mark Milley after he admitted to holding calls with his Chinese counterpart working under Trump. President Joe Biden said he has great confidence in Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley after the embattled military man admitted on Wednesday he spoke to his Chinese counterpart in coordination with defense officials, but the acting Pentagon chief at the time said he did not authorize the calls. Milley was responding to a bombshell report that claims he phoned his counterpart there behind Trump's back over concerns the ex-president would take rogue action to stay in office. I have great confidence in General Milley, Biden said to reporters on Wednesday afternoon. He was asked about whether the general did the right thing after a meeting with business leaders and CEOs to discuss the U.S. COVID-19 response. But former acting Defense Secretary Chris Miller, who would have led the Pentagon when Milley made the January call, said he did not and would not ever authorize the general to have the secret calls. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is the highest-ranking military officer whose sole role is providing military-specific advice to the president, and by law is prohibited from exercising executive authority to command forces, Miller told Fox News. Miller pointed out that the chain of command goes from the president to defense chief, not through Milley's position. His former chief of staff Kash Patel told Fox, the law governing the Joint Chiefs of Staff specifically forbids the chairman from exercising any operational command authority. The outlet also reported the call placed in October was coordinated with then Defense Secretary Mark Esper, who was fired shortly after the election. But current Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is standing behind Milley. He has full trust and confidence in Milley and the job that HE's doing, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said at a briefing on Wednesday. Kirby declined to comment on reports that the general told his Chinese counterpart that he would give China a heads-up if Trump decided to strike. I'm not going to speak to unconfirmed reports from a book that we haven't looked at and read yet, and certainly not to a conversation that took place before the administration took office, he said. But he added that chairmen across multiple administrations routinely have direct channel communications with their counterparts in other countries. It is particularly important to have those communications with a nation-state with which there are real and significant tensions to try and reduce those, clear things up, make sure you reduce the risk of miscalculation. I think you saw in the statement the chairman's office put out earlier today, that was exactly what was behind the context for this particular call, he said. Kirby said the calls took place during a difficult time in our nation's history. The spokesman was vague when he was pressed on whether it was normal for a Joint Chiefs chairman to not consult the president before contacting a foreign counterpart. One reporter asked if Milley should be court-martialed, prompting Kirby to exclaim, "Oh my goodness. I can't speak to processes before this administration took office, I just can't," an exasperated Kirby said. But he admitted that it was typical for conversations with a country like China would be a fully coordinated conversation. Retired General Jack Keane said on Fox that he takes Milley at his word and called his actions responsible. Former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton also expressed support for the embattled chairman, noting the pressures he would have been under in the aftermath of the 2020 election. I have no doubt General Milley consulted widely with his colleagues on the National Security Council and others during this period, Bolton said in a statement Wednesday. I would also be very surprised if many of them were not fully aware of General Milley's actions, and they fully concurred in them. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki reaffirmed the administration's support for Milley, lauding him as a patriot. "The president knows General Milley," Psaki said at her daily news briefing on Wednesday. "They have worked side by side through a range of international events. The president has complete confidence in his leadership, his patriotism and his fidelity to our Constitution." She noted that Milley held his position heading the Joint Chiefs for 8 months of Biden's presidency. Psaki then went on to provide context to the period in which Milley made the calls. "The outgoing President of the United States, during this time, fomented unrest, leading to an insurrection and an attack on our nation's capital on January 6. She called it one of the darkest days in our nation's history. I can't speak to the former president's experience with him or the former president's views of him. But this president, this current president, who follows the Constitution, who's not fomenting an insurrection, who follows the rule of law, has complete confidence in Chairman Milley and him continuing to serve in his role," Psaki said. She also took a swipe at Republican lawmakers. "I don't think the president is looking for the guidance of members of Congress who stood by while the President of the United States and the leader of their party fomented an insurrection and many of them are silent." Asked whether Biden believes Milley should testify, Psaki deferred to the Pentagon. The Biden official was also pressed on Trump's Tuesday accusation that Milley committed treason. "I don't think I have any further response to the former president, other than to reiterate the context of this moment in time, what everybody's talking about here," Psaki answered. She was also questioned on whether there are concerns over the U.S. military's chain of command, but used the moment to reaffirm Biden's support for Milley using the same points. "Again, I think why it was important for me to convey what I did, is that the president has worked side by side with Chairman Milley for almost 8 months, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. His experience with him has been that he is a patriot, he is somebody who has fidelity to the Constitution, and he is confident in his leadership and the role he has played in his experience with him." She added that she couldn't speak to anonymous, unconfirmed reports about prior conversations during the last administration. Single quote.